This episode of SpectreSoundStudios is brought to you by Acusonus. So a lot of you guys have been asking for some drum mixing videos, and well, Acusonus asked me if I could show off a very cool mixing trick featuring their program DRUMATOM. It's a leakage suppression program that kills cymbal bleed dead. Now, for a lot of guys learning how to record drums, controlling cymbal bleed can be a real challenge. Don't worry, it's still a pain for us older guys too. You can only do so much when you have a drummer that's way too heavy on the cymbals. That is, until now. Okay, so why DRUMATOM? Well, it's unique among leakage suppression tools because it's not a gate. A gate can only turn on and off. DRUMATOM intelligently analyzes each track and then cancels out what doesn't belong. This is completely tweakable, and for a more in-depth explanation, please see my first DRUMATOM demo I made last year. The link is in the description below. Okay, so what's this cool trick? All right, a few people have said that DRUMATOM takes away too much from the kit. It suppresses too much, and a little bit of bleed helps a kit gel together. Okay, well, there may be some truth to that. However, you can dial in exactly as much leakage suppression as you like. But here's an even cooler way to do it, and you can add in precisely as much bleed as you like. Okay, first up, consolidate your drum tracks from your DAW and then load them into DRUMATOM. Consolidation is the key here. We want everything to line up perfectly, and you're going to see why in a minute. Make sure your effects are also turned off for your consolidation. Okay, so set up DRUMATOM so it knows what track is what and then analyze. Next, crank up the suppression to maximum on the kick and snare. And then dial it in on the toms to the point where you can still hear the tails. Okay, I'll admit, right now this doesn't sound ideal, but the bleed is dead. Now here's where it gets interesting. In your DAW, create a second track for every close mic. Kick, snare, toms, every mic gets a second track. Now take your normally recorded tracks and move them onto the tracks you just made. We're going to call those bleed tracks. Then we want to load up the processed DRUMATOM tracks and place them on the original channels which still have your mix settings. Remember to leave your overhead and room mics alone here. They are fine. We're suppressing leakage on the close mics, not on the mics that capture the whole kit. Now this is where the fun begins. Zero your DRUMATOM tracks. Turn off your effects, turn off your mix bus effects, pan everything center, faders at 0, and make sure your bleed tracks are zeroed as well. Now, play your tracks and reverse phase on the DRUMATOM process tracks. Now what you're hearing now is just the bleed from the kit. And what you want to do is export those to mono files. Next, clear all the bleed channels and then leave only the DRUMATOM processed files. Turn your effects back on and you can notice it still sounds a little strange. Now what we do is we import those mono bleed files we just made. Remember, the phase is reversed on the DRUMATOM tracks versus the original tracks, so all the hits on the drums themselves have been canceled out. We've got bleed only. So just remember to pan your tom bleed tracks to match the toms on your original mix. Now, just to make things simple in this next clip, I've put my DRUMATOM tracks and my bleed tracks into separate groups, and with the overhead and room mics back in, it's a pretty rockin' mix. The great thing is I can now add in precisely as much bleed as I like into the drums. But here's the interesting bit. The bleed is completely unprocessed. It's the raw, natural sound of the drums. Only the DRUMATOM tracks have EQ and compression added. I can go as crazy as I want with the effects and not have to worry about adding in cymbal bleed if I want to crank up the 10K on the snare mic. That's amazing. And you can still treat the bleed if you want to. Add higher low-pass filters, turn them up, turn them down. It's really up to you, and for once, it's not up to the drummer. Yes! Just for comparison, here's the DRUMATOM mix and the original mix using gating. You can definitely hear the hi-hat and the crashes creeping into the snare mics. I like to use a 57 in conjunction with a small diaphragm condenser on the top of the snare. The condenser's got a better attack in my opinion, but it isn't nearly as directional. It's very susceptible to bleed. DRUMATOM completely kills the problem and lets me EQ that mic how I want to. That's extremely cool. I've always had a problem with drummers writing a crash too hard and it bleeds into the snare mics. Now it's not even an issue. If you want to record real drums, head on over to acusonus.com and grab a copy of the DRUMATOM demo. Try it out and you'll see why DRUMATOM has to be one of the most important tools for mixing drums ever. It's an elegant solution to a problem engineers have been dealing with since sound was first put to tape. And just to prove a point, here it is on a full mix.